Some houses keep secrets. Some rooms hold memories. But then there are places that never rest, never sleep. Tonight, I will tell you the story of a room that still haunts me, a room where silence was never truly silent. I grew up in an ordinary house, in an ordinary neighborhood. The kind of place where kids rode bikes until sunset, where the smell of dinners drifted from every kitchen window, and where you always waved at your neighbors, even if you didn't know their names. Our house wasn't big, but it was comfortable. A two-story home with creaky wooden stairs, faded wallpaper, and the faint smell of dust no matter how much my mother cleaned. I had my own bedroom upstairs, right next to what we called the spare room. That room was nothing special, just an extra space filled with boxes, old furniture, and things we didn't use anymore. I never thought much of it growing up. It was just the extra room. Sometimes I'd sneak in there to look through old toys or books, but it wasn't exactly a place I enjoyed being. Too still, too quiet. Back then, life was normal. School, dinner at the table, weekends watching TV with my family. My parents worked a lot, so evenings together felt important. We weren't wealthy, but we had what we needed. I had friends, I laughed often, I slept soundly at night. That was before it started. The first time I noticed something, it was so small that I didn't even think about it. I was maybe 12 at the time, sitting in my room doing homework. I had the window open, letting in the cool breeze of early autumn. My desk faced the wall we shared with the spare room. I remember pausing because I thought I heard movement from inside that room. Not loud, not obvious, just a soft shuffling, like fabric dragging against the floor. I assumed it was the wind. The spare room window didn't shut properly, and sometimes the curtains moved when a draft came through. So I kept writing, barely thinking twice. But then there was a knock, just one. A soft tap against the wall between my room and the spare room. I froze my pencil mid-air. "Mom," I called out, my voice shaky. From downstairs, she answered back. "What? Did you knock on the wall?" She sounded confused. "No. Why would I?" I laughed nervously to myself and shook it off. Probably just the house settling. That's what my dad always said whenever something creaked or popped. Old houses do that. At least, that's what I told myself. Over the next few weeks, I noticed little things. A box that had shifted when no one had been in the spare room. The faint sound of whispering when I passed by the door at night. Shadows under the crack of the door, even when the lights were off. But again, I pushed it aside. I didn't want to be the weird kid who got scared of shadows. One night, though, something strange happened. I had a friend over, my best friend Ryan. We were playing video games late into the night, laughing too loud, probably keeping my parents awake. At some point, we heard a sound from the spare room. It was like a chair scraping against the floor. Long, slow, deliberate. Ryan paused the game and looked at me. "What was that?" I tried to play it cool. "The house makes noises sometimes. It's old." But he wasn't convinced. That didn't sound like the house. We stared at the door to the spare room, the shadows underneath darker than usual. Neither of us moved for a good minute, just listening. And then nothing. Silence. Eventually, Ryan shrugged and unpaused the game, but the mood had shifted. We didn't laugh as loudly after that, and I noticed that he avoided looking at the spare room door for the rest of the night. It wasn't until much later that I realized the pattern. The noises, the shadows, the strange sense of being watched, they always came from the spare room. Always. Even when I told my parents, they brushed it off. "It's probably mice," my dad said, sipping his coffee. "Or maybe you're just imagining it." My mom added gently, as if not wanting to scare me. But I knew I wasn't imagining things. Because at night, when the house should have been still, I would hear it. The faint sound of someone moving around in the room right next to mine. And sometimes, if I listened closely enough, I could hear breathing. The older I got, the less I wanted to be near that spare room. By the time I was 15, I avoided it completely. If I had to grab something from inside, an old blanket, a winter coat, whatever, I'd rush in, grab it, and shut the door quickly behind me. But no matter how fast I moved, I always had the sense that something inside the room was watching. It wasn't just noises anymore. Sometimes I'd walk past the door and feel a sudden drop in temperature, as though the hallway itself exhaled cold air. Other times the smell would hit me, like damp wood mixed with something sour, almost metallic. My mom said it was just old furniture, but no other room smelled like that. At night, lying in bed, I began noticing shadows. Not big, obvious ones, just faint movements under the crack of the spare room door, like someone walking slowly back and forth. I told my dad one morning, "I think someone gets in there at night." He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Like a person. I hear footsteps. I see shadows. He sighed. No one's in there, kiddo. That room's locked when we're not using it. But what if the lock's broken? Then I'd know. Trust me, there's nothing in there. He made it sound so simple, but he didn't hear the things I heard. One Saturday evening, my cousin Emily came to stay over. She was a year older than me and always teased me for being too serious. I didn't want to sound paranoid, so I didn't mention the spare room. That night, though, she brought it up herself. We were lying in my room talking, when she pointed to the wall we shared with the spare room. Hey, what's that noise? I froze. The sound was faint but clear. A rhythmic thumping, like someone tapping their fingers on wood. Don't worry about it, I said quickly. The house makes noises. She laughed. That's not the house. It sounds like someone's bored in there. She leaned closer to the wall. Hello, she whispered, almost playfully. The tapping stopped. Her face paled, and she pulled back. Okay, that was creepy. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, she told my parents what happened. My dad chuckled. You two let your imaginations run wild. That room's just storage. But Emily didn't laugh. She looked unsettled the entire time we ate breakfast. When her parents came to pick her up, she whispered to me, Don't sleep with your door open. Ever. That stuck with me. For months, I kept my bedroom door shut tight at night. Still, I could hear things. The dragging of something heavy. The faint sound of breathing that wasn't mine. And then came the whispers. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear soft voices through the wall. Too muffled to make out words, but too clear to be nothing. Mom. I whispered one night, thinking maybe she was in the spare room for some reason. No answer. The whispering continued just low enough to drive me insane. The next morning, I asked her, Were you in the spare room last night? She looked at me with confusion. No. Why would I be? That's when I stopped asking questions. Nobody believed me anyway. But I knew what I heard. And deep down, I knew it was only getting worse. By 17, I was sleeping less and less. Every night felt like a battle against that room. I'd put on music, trying to drown out the sounds, but the whispers always crept through. Sometimes they even seemed to match the rhythm of the music, as if mocking me. One night, I woke to the sound of my door creaking open. My heart jumped into my throat. I always locked it before bed. Always. I sat up, staring into the darkness. The door was half open, and in the hallway beyond, the spare room door stood wide open too. I froze. I couldn't see anything inside. It was pitch black, but I felt it, a weight pressing down on me, a presence that didn't belong. Then, slowly, the spare room door began to close. Not fast, not slammed, just a slow, deliberate push until it clicked shut, my door too. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, I tried to tell my mom. The door opened by itself. I whispered. She looked tired. Honey, you've got to stop scaring yourself. Maybe you forgot to lock it. I don't forget. I never forget. Her smile faltered just a little. Well, maybe you dreamed it. That was the problem. Even I was starting to question myself. Was I losing it? Were the whispers and shadows just in my head? But then came the dreams. I began having the same dream over and over. I was standing in the spare room surrounded by boxes. Everything was dim, but I could hear dozens of voices whispering at once. They weren't speaking English. I couldn't recognize the language, but I felt the malice in every syllable. And always, at the far corner of the room, there was a figure, too dark to make out, but tall, hunched, watching. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my throat sore as though I'd been screaming. One morning, my mom asked why I was hoarse. I lied and said I had a cold. The truth was, I didn't know if I was still dreaming or if the screaming was real. By now, even my friends noticed something was wrong. You look like crap, Ryan said one afternoon. I don't sleep much, I admitted. He smirked, but his eyes looked serious. Still scared of the spare room, I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night, I decided to prove it to myself. I set up an old tape recorder outside the spare room door. Just pressed record and left it running while I slept. When I played it back the next morning, most of it was silence. Then, around 20:17 a.m., the sound came through. Footsteps. Slow, heavy pacing. And then a voice my own. Screaming. The night it all came to a head, the air felt different, heavy. Charged like before a thunderstorm, I tried to ignore it. I put on my headphones, shut my door, locked it tight. But sometime after midnight, I woke up gasping for air. My room was freezing, my breath visible in the dark. And then I heard it, a scream. Not mine this time, a woman's, high-pitched, raw, full of agony. It came from the spare room so loud it shook the walls. I bolted upright, heart hammering. My parents came running up the stairs. "What happened?" My dad shouted. "You heard it too," I gasped. He looked pale. My mom clutched his arm, whispering. It came from the room. For the first time, they didn't dismiss it. The screaming continued, now mixed with pounding against the walls. Furniture scraping. Boxes toppling. It sounded like the room was tearing itself apart. My dad grabbed the doorknob. "Stay back!" he ordered. But when he tried to open it, the door wouldn't budge. The screaming reached a fever pitch. My mom covered her ears, crying. And then, silence, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, everything was untouched. Boxes stacked neatly. Furniture unmoved. No one there. But the smell, God, the smell. Like rot. Like something long dead. My dad slammed the door shut. "We're not going in there again." But it was already too late. That night, none of us slept. After that night, nothing was the same. We stopped using the spare room completely. My dad nailed the door shut, but it didn't matter. The sound still came. The whispers, the breathing, the scratching at the walls. Sometimes, late at night, I'd see the doorknob turning slowly, even with the nails in place. My mom grew quieter, more nervous. My dad drank more. And me, I just waited. For the next scream, one night, weeks later, I woke up to find my bedroom door wide open again. My lock still intact, the nail still hammered into the spare room door. But something was different. This time, the whispers weren't muffled. They were inside my room, surrounding me. I froze under the covers as cold air swept over my body, and then I felt it, fingers brushing against my arm. Not warm, not human. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't work. And then I heard it, clear, right next to my ear. A whisper. One single word. "Stay." And we moved out not long after. My parents never explained why. They sold the house quickly, almost desperately. But even now, years later, I can't escape it. No matter where I live, no matter how far I go, I still wake up some nights to the sound of footsteps in the dark. I still dream of that room. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I swear I hear the same whisper. And so, the room remains silent, yet never truly sleeping. Some doors are better left closed, some shadows better left unseen. But if you ever find yourself lying awake at night, listening to the stillness of your own home, ask yourself, is it really quiet? Or is something waiting just on the other side of the wall,